this particular project, called the WISER Early Warning for Southern Africa project, is basically a project that looks at utilizing nowcasting techniques to provide early warning within the SADC region. And you'll see I've put the basic, one of the key objectives of this project. We're looking at the period 0 to 48 hours ahead for early warnings, but our main focus is nowcasting, which is the 0 to 2 hours time scale, but we are stretching it a little bit to the 0 to 6 hour time scale. And the countries involved in SADC is obviously South Africa, but also Zambia and Mozambique, where we are collaborating closely with those institutions. Then on the slide itself, you can see all the other organizations that forms part of this collaborative network and that is participating in the project. You'll see the World Met Organization through the World Weather Research Program, the Finnish Meteorological Institute, actually the UK Met Office and EUMETSAT, and also ECMWF are non-executive partners, if I can put it that way, but they are also partnering ourselves within this network. So my presentation, just roughly to give some structure to my talk, I'm having introduction, and then I will put the WISER project in an international context, but also in an African and regional context. I was asked to maybe talk a little bit about some of the activities that we conduct within the WISER project, and I can't do it without referring to the different work packages. But we will be looking at the engagement program, the product development, training is very important, and then obviously everything is being culminated in the test beds, which we will get to later on. And then I will also talk about the communications framework of this project, and finally the conclusion. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this slide because everybody knows it. Everybody knows where it comes from. The 4 pillars of the early warning for all project, and basically, or the early warning for all initiative rather. But what we would like to highlight here perhaps is that, as we all know, hazards that occurs globally affect the poorest countries more than, you know, those countries that are more resilient, or the first world countries. And a lot of, or the majority of those countries, the 50% that doesn't have an adequate early warning system, is actually located on the African continent. And hence the importance of actually conducting this project on the African continent, and in particular in the SADC region as well. So that was the international context. For Africa, colleagues, you will notice that, and you will know that the World Meteorological Organization has got its own administrative as well as its structures by which it runs and also gives guidance to meteorological services. And with Africa, it's not different. So what they utilize, you will notice that we call it regional specialized meteorological centers that are responsible to service other countries, and we call it here a node within the region. So, for instance, we have the SAWS, the South African Weather Service, responsible for SADC. We have the Kenya Meteorological Department responsible for East Africa, and ANASIM having responsibility for countries in West Africa. Now, in the context of the WISER project, I must clearly state, if you look at the right-hand column, is that this project doesn't start from afresh. It doesn't start from a
I'm sorry, we are not hearing you. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, we seem to have lost the sound.
I think you might have accidentally muted.
mute myself. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
thank
now
you.
we hear it loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. I didn't realize, but I was just looking at the right-hand side of this slide, which basically states that the WISER project is not a project in isolation, but that it actually builds on previous experience and projects that have been conducted on the continent as well as within the region. For instance, the WISER SWIFT program in West Africa that was done a couple of years ago for West and East Africa. We've got, as I've indicated earlier, international role players that are part of the WISER project, such as UMETSAT, ECMWF, and the UK Met Office. And also that this WISER program is integrated into a publication that, or initiative that looks at the Southern Africa Regional Anticipatory Action Roadmap. And another characteristic of the WISER project is that it's a scalable project. It can be customized to include more countries as well as more services that are being developed for the countries. So hence that regional aspect and the context of the WISER project as well. I just seem to be struggling with my... Okay, I'm moving to the next slide, and colleagues, this is a slide that I want to just park a little bit longer because it basically gives, in a nutshell, an overview of what the project is about. And I'm not going to read everything on this page, but basically looking at the objectives column or the objective part of the slide, you will notice that the nowcasting aspect of producing early warning services focuses very prominently here. Because it's an aspect that, once we've entered into negotiations and collaborations, we've realized that in SADC, very few countries actually conduct nowcasting. They do the normal forecasting, and based on those forecasting, they actually provide early warning services. But they don't utilize the nowcasting tools that are available to them, and hence the importance of this project. Obviously, the aim of objective further is, to reduce the risk of storms, and our focus is on urban populations. But I must add, a clarification here. We also have rural populations, on our radar, so to speak. So it's not only for urban. Then, obviously, we need to look at the business models, because looking beyond this project, we will have to look at the sustainability of these nowcasting techniques to produce early warning services. And then finally, and again, here the focus is again to stimulate amongst the national meteorological services of SADC to utilize nowcasting techniques. The work packages I'm going to deal with a little bit later on, but you know, our expected impacts is to save lives. Our outcomes is as indicated there. I'm not going to, as I said, to read everything, but basically to build resilience based on early warning system. And then our outputs is obviously regional networks that are strengthened and increased capacity, not only at source, but also in the region to create nowcasting products. And then finally, the you know, financial models to ensure the sustainability of the activities. In the orange column, you can see some other detail of the project. I'm not going to go through that, but I will basically we will handle the test bed a little bit later on in the presentation. Let's go to the work packages. You'll see that these work packages actually covers those pillars of the early warning for all system. And I will be covering them in a little bit more detail, but just to mention them here, work package 1 is about the stakeholder engagement and the co-production of products and services. Work package 2 is about the product development as well as communication platform development. And then work package 3, capacity development, where obviously the training aspect receives the focus. Work package 4 is our test beds. And then we've also got a work package 5, which I'm not going to deal with a lot in this presentation because it's about the project management and the learning aspects of the project. Let's dive into the user engagement a little bit. And I think this slide actually captures what is happening in this work package quite well. First of all, we engage with, we've identified 3 communities in each country, whereby which we have a very intense engagement with them. So we will utilize, you know, aspects like through the engagement, find out what are the user needs. In other words, what do they need? We will sensitize them to the, you know, and give them and make them aware of the severe weather and hazard risks within the area. And then we will get feedback from them. And we will start finding out through these engagement on the what products and services they require in order to you know, to be warned in an effective manner. And then we test these aspects through the test beds. So the focus here when we talk about users are the urban community. We look at community-based user groups like disability organizations and female inclusion or gender inclusion. And then there's also the disaster management, or what we call intermediaries and NGOs. That is the focus of these engagements. When we get to product development, we've went through a very, I won't say a laborious process, but we did a scan of the environment to see what products and services are available before we start the development of new ones. So source being the RSMC center in SADC, we've utilized the web portal that have been in existence for quite a number of years, and we've got nowcasting products available there on the RSMC webpage. But we've also realized that with the new Meteosat third generation on its way, there is room for new product development that is taking place. We've also looked at the previous WISER Swift project in West Africa, and also products that have been developed during that project included them into our product suite. And then we've worked with specialized centers like obviously Leeds University, and also the UK Centre for the Environment and Hydrology, which has got a range of products that focuses on convective cores and the development and movement of these, which is highly effective in providing, nowcasting forecasts for the 0 to 1 hour and 0 to 2 hour timescale. And then obviously we have a whole range of products from our international partners like EUMETSAT, the UK Met Office, and also from the source unified model, our numerical weather prediction model that we are providing on this product suite of ours. Training, I know that Jannie Stander is on the meeting, but the training that have been conducted during year one, and also now that we are entering the second year of this project, is online training that is going to, it has been and is going to continue being provided to those two Met services. We are going to look at, again, specialized training by specialists, for instance, from EUMETSAT on the nowcasting satellite application facility, the SAF products. There's also other training that takes place on the African continent. And if it's relevant to the WISER project, we encourage our forecasters in the region to actually participate on those. But mainly our regional training center here in Pretoria through Jannie and the training colleagues of the training center provide face-to-face training. This is just a quick interjection of how we perceive the WISER value chain for creating early warnings look like. So if you start at the left-hand side, you'll see, and it's linked also to the early warning for all pillars. So on the left-hand side, you will see the observation platforms, which is talking to pillar number 2. That information gets to the forecaster. The forecaster provides a forecast or a warning, and that warning gets disseminated to various users. First of all, the intermediaries, the media, the radio, and all other aspects of social media is also involved. And then it reaches obviously the end user, and the end user is in a position to utilize this information and react on the warning. And then we also envisage a system whereby the user actually gives us some feedback on how effective these warnings were. And this is what we were testing during the first test bed that we conducted a while ago. Then, colleagues, I want to, all the work packages culminates in the test bed, which is work package 4. And in the test bed, it's an environment where everything that has been done in all the other preceding work packages are being tested. So we get together for a 2-week period, forecasters, academics, researchers, social scientists, the intermediary groups get together, and we actually do a test run of creating early warning services. And at the end of each day, we have an evaluation of how good or bad did the forecast or the early warning system work. But we utilize all the tools that are available to us, like numerical weather prediction models. As I've indicated in the beginning, the focus is very much on satellite remote sensing because it's the most reliable source of information. And then we also develop standing operating procedures for forecasting and nowcasting. I'll see at the bottom, the first test bed was done in January, February earlier this year, and we're planning towards a second one for January, February 2025. Communication is a critical part of the WISER project. In other words, what information do you communicate and how do you communicate it? What platforms or channels are you utilizing to communicate? So we've identified basically three main categories of communication. First of all, it's the Met service to Met service communication. In other words, the Met services through regional web portals, websites that communicates with each other in order to alert each other about impending natural hazards that will occur. Then the second level of communication is the Met services to their different disaster management structures within their countries. And the channels that we use there is still emails, maybe WhatsApps. I must just say during the first test bed, WhatsApps was actually mostly utilized, and we need to expand on that. And then further, the last level is communication to the end user. In other words, the person that must make the decision to stay or to run, depending on the warning that were issued. So there we use community radio stations, mobile apps, SMS messages, and even non-traditional methods is being looked at in this case. So I'm winding down my presentation and coming towards the end to say that, the success factors we will be obviously measured in the number of lives and property being saved. Hopefully, we can achieve that. Another success factor is the raising the level of awareness for early warnings. And thirdly, it's about the soliciting of partners to assist us in providing this early warnings, because no institution alone can do that. And then a fourth success factor is that if we can impart at national Met services in the SADC region the need for nowcasting and utilizing nowcasting principles to produce early warnings. And then obviously the strengthening of relationships between Met services, intermediaries, and people on the ground. Okay, what happens after the project? Funding has stopped, everybody has packed their suitcases and they've left the SADC region. What happens now? So this is not a project that we envisage that will stop because the funding has stopped. This project and the benefits that is reaped from this project must be continued, and the benefits must be rolled out to the rest of the SADC region. And for that, we need to address the sustainability of this activities. And we are looking at a business model development and, involving perhaps public-private partnerships and even maybe further project-based funding that could assist in this. And then finally, we will obviously look at monitoring, and we will continue monitoring and evaluating the project way beyond the end of the period, just in order to monitor its effectiveness. Colleague, and then I am finished, but I just want to make a few comments on the fact that in this project, it is a very let's call it an industrious project to tackle. The question is being asked whether we will be successful in addressing all the issues. And to be honest, I don't know. And the reason why I say I don't know, we obviously, as the project implementers, will try our best to make a success of it. But everything, and this is why I've put this slide on. In Africa, everything doesn't happen as easy as it happens in Europe or the Americas, where they have all the resources. So everything that happens in Africa happens because there are a number of dedicated people that push us through in order to make this a project like this a success. So I just wanted to finish with this slide to say that Africa is a tough place to have projects like this running and making a success of it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nico. Can we just give a digital clap? Yeah, can we give Nico a digital clap? Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Nico, for the for the concluding statement that if there is any good place on earth for this kind of project, then it is Africa. I agree with you 100%. Thank you for this wonderful presentation, sharing what you and your team of colleagues and institutions have been doing. I tell you that your work plan, your objective 1 and your work plan 2 and 3 directly crosses with what EOTEC is currently doing. And one particular thing too interesting about this project is the gender inclusivity, which is very, very important for us in Africa, because we know that when we are talking about extreme weather events, when we are talking about disaster that arises from extreme weather events, the women, the children, the physically challenged, and the elderly ones are most affected. And this is one area that your project 2 has taken care of. The scalability of your project is also very interesting to us to the rest of us in other parts of Africa, the West, the Central, and the East Africa. We have I can see a lot of climate scientists, a lot of meteorologists and environmental scientists in the room. And before I throw the open for questions and comments, I just want to make one appeal on behalf of the COP Africa. In your work plan 3 is on capacity development, which, like I said earlier, it crosses with also what EOTEC is doing. And I can see during the presentation that there is an online training. So I just want to appeal that you have EOTEC African members in mind, and then include so that this training can go across and much beyond the SADC region. So this is just an appeal. So, colleagues, I want to do. The floor is open for comments. You can jump in. You can put up your hands. We'll surely digital hands, and then we'll surely recognize you. So, floor is open, colleagues.
I see there is one question in the chat from William Straka
Okay.
also. Oh, and I see some hands up too.
Okay, Oluwafemi, you can see Oluwafemi's hand. Yeah, Oluwafemi, you are recognized, please. After
Okay,
you.
so thank you very much, sir. My name is Oluwafemi from Nigeria, it's in Lagos, Nigeria. And I am a new member. This is my first time joining this meeting. And I just wanted to is there a WhatsApp group for on-the-go communication? Rather than waiting for maybe, I don't know how frequent the email communications are for members. So I recently, a few days ago, I just sent and I registered via a link I saw on WhatsApp group. But I wanted to know if there is any on the go and maybe there is any phone number one can call for potential project implementation and all that.
Yeah, okay, good question for our able secretariat to handle, yeah.
Sure, I can jump in. Thanks so much for the question.
Yeah,
we actually are just starting on a WhatsApp group. We've tried a couple of times to get it organized and haven't gotten it off the ground. It's been kind of informal. I know FEOM and others in the group have just been informally forwarding information through their networks. But thanks for the suggestion. I think it kind of reinforces the idea that we need to do a WhatsApp group. We don't have a phone number though. We're 22nd century organization with no phone number, just WhatsApp communication, and of course our website and email, so you can find us there. But thanks so much. We're glad to have you, and we'll get you involved and make sure you're signed up for our meetings, and hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the floor is still open for comments on Nico's prayer. Mayor Martins, please. You are recognized.
Thank you very much, FTM. Thank you, Mr. Kroese, for the presentation. Very inspiring and interesting, really. Congratulations on your project and the efforts you are making there. I was very interested to see also that you mentioned it can be stretched to other regions and countries. So I think that's really, really important. I was wondering one thing, that's the question now. You know, at UN Spider, the office I'm representing, we are very much in touch with the national disaster management agencies, not as much with the meteorological agencies. We see a difference sometimes in the warning, let's say, or the understanding of warnings, comparing it. Meteorological agencies, they warn about where an extreme weather event would happen. So that's a lot already, and getting the message out there is a lot already. The national disaster management agencies, they are often interested in the so-called impact-based forecasting. So they want to know not only where things are happening, but what are the impacts or potential impacts of those. So I just wanted to ask you whether that's something you are also considering in your project, or is it something you would then basically advise the national disaster management agencies and partners to include in their follow-up tasks then? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Martins, for the question. Yeah, do we have any other ones so that Nico can take the two together? Or okay, Nico, can you come in?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, addressing the issue of, you've mentioned the collaboration between the disaster management structures and the national meteorological services within countries. And fortunately, within South Africa, at least, as well as what we have observed in Zambia and Mozambique, those relationships are quite good. And it's sometimes just, what you mentioned, there's some different interpretations sometimes, or different warnings that go out. So in our that depends basically on your arrangement between the institutions that are involved with you know, the issuance of natural or warnings for natural disasters. Because I can tell you that the nature of some of the disasters won't allow you to consult between the National Met Services and the National Disaster Management structures. And therefore, the Met Service in that case is and will be the main instigator of warnings. But warnings like, you know, I won't call it a slow onset, but a slower onset, like a tropical cyclone that's approaching, that you actually have a couple of days warning through satellite imagery and other real-time monitoring platforms. This is where then the National Meteorological Services and the disaster management structures can actually come together and actually have in South Africa, we call it a joint operations center, where the activities in order to address and manage the disaster are being managed from a centralized office, obviously being fed the whole time with real-time information. But that takes a few hours or a day or two to actually call together. Then on the issue of impact-based forecasting, I'm glad you've brought that up, because I have not alluded to it in my presentation. And of course, impact-based forecasting is actually central to our early warnings, and the whole impact-based risk matrix is a central part of our early warnings and communication. I just want to add as well, we are trying also, we've had some limited success up to now, but also to include the standard common alert protocol of communication of, you know, early warning messages, that it's being communicated in a standard format, that we also are actually promoting within this project. And hopefully we've tried it in the first test bed with mixed success, but we will hopefully do it better in the second test bed. So yes, impact-based and common alert protocol and all those standardized WMO practices are implemented. I see, Erin, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much. I wanted to just make sure you saw William Straka's comment, his question in the chat about satellite. Is there usage of satellite-derived precipitation, soil moisture, and flood extent data? So that's a question from him. And then I have another question that's actually very different, and just going back to the community engagement piece. Can you talk a little bit more about how practically you do that? Because I don't want to make assumptions, but I think in many cases, weather services are not used to that kind of activity. That's not exactly what they do. And so how can you talk practically about how are you developing these relationships, and how are you, I'm sure that there are intermediaries, you mentioned the community-based organizations, are you providing training to people to support them, or can I think it'd be interesting to hear about the nuts and bolts, the practicality of how that community engagement piece is happening.
Yes.
Thanks. So those two questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll try to answer William first. So William, as I've indicated, we are utilizing satellite remote sensing as our main, let's call it, observation platform. And obviously products that emanate from utilizing remote sensing and being located on the African continent, we are obviously very well versed with EUMETSAT products from the application centers. So yes, the derived precipitation products are quite an integral part of our product range. And then soil moisture is a very important antecedent condition for, flash floods to occur. So yes, we are utilizing those, soil moisture. In indicating the flood extent information, we have to go to very higher resolution information. So we are on the side of, forecasting. So we do have a flash flood forecasting tool that is based on the rainfall that occurs. Although it's probably a product that are lacking within our armament within this project is, the flood extent. And that's only perhaps, we can only monitor that, as the event occur or after the event has happened. So yes, there are other institutions, going over to your question, Erin, about, the Weather Service and National Meteorological Services not necessarily having the mandate to actually interact with communities, and you are quite right. It's when we were drafted into this project, it felt very uncomfortable because it was something totally new to us. But fortunately, some of our partners, and specifically Kulima, is specializing in these aspects of having co-development and co-production workshops with the community in order to find out what are their needs, what do they require, and then bringing ourselves as scientists and researchers into the discussions, and in order to sit around the table and starting to realize how far we were apart. But now that we are in this project, how close we come together, and realizing that, a lot of, or some of the products and services that have been developed is not relevant to some of these communities. And, instead of wasting your time and effort on products such as that, to actually develop products that actually make a difference and an impact, and help the community make a decision, even a single community member. I see William has also still raised a hand.
I was just raising a hand in comment to your answer. I did want to make you aware that NOAA has an operational global flood product from the LEO sensor, the VIRS LEO sensor, which is at 375 meters, and that they are working on the downscaling it to 30-meter resolution, and that's publicly available to users. We are working with WMO up in the northern part of Africa to integrate it into some of the dashboards that they are working on there. And if there's an interest in your work, I'll drop my contact information in the in the chat, and feel free to contact me I can give you some more detail on that.
Okay. No, thank you, William. That definitely we will be interested in such a product. We are currently utilizing a product. I think it's a product that the WMO is supporting. They've implemented it in Central America, and then in SADC, and then they are also moving to other regions of the world. But it's very much a local including a few countries within the region. But yeah, a global product on operational, operational flood product will definitely be useful. And
Yeah.
another thing that we've realized, doing this test bed with our colleagues from Mozambique and Zambia, is that, they are consulting a lot of, and I would call it maybe web pages from overseas or, foreign countries, especially obviously your ECMWFs, your NOAA and European Met Services, whereby they utilize those products within their forecasts and perhaps early warnings as well. And yes, we will obviously verify and look at this product and see how good it performs, and obviously actually utilize it as part of our operational suite. I see Nancy Searby.
Yes, thank you for the very interesting presentation and the conversation that has gone along with it. Really appreciate your co-development. I had a question about enabling technology. Enabling technology, what I'm thinking about is internet, cloud, or other computing capabilities, things that we rely on that maybe are more plentiful in some places than other places. So have you encountered that challenge? And if so, how have you addressed it? I know that WhatsApp is a great end of the road way of communicating, but it's there's this whole modeling piece that is pretty compute heavy. So I just was curious what you encountered and what you learned from that.
So I will be commenting on your question, from second-hand information that I've received from our ICT department. But yes, things like the internet and cloud computing in our neck of the world is still an expensive enterprise. You'll see, that last slide I showed is, internet in Africa is not as common as it is in the first world countries. We actually found that internet is actually a big or a lack of internet is one of those things that prohibits some of these countries to actually, develop. And it's one of the issues that we are also looking at, to put some infrastructure within those countries, Zambia and Mozambique in this particular case, for them to receive, the relevant information timeously. Yes, personally, I believe that those technologies will come to the fore once they become more affordable. But as yet, it is still an expensive exercise. Even within the South African Weather Service, we are scratching our heads about utilizing, cloud technology. And we have made some bold steps to implement it, but it's not for your run-of-the-mill weather service in SADC at this stage.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. It's an interesting problem. In my mind, I think about who might be good partners to help work that particular problem, because we at NASA don't usually work the enabling infrastructure part, but it's so critical. And so World Bank is sometimes an interesting possibility. I think thinking about who are the right suppliers and supporters of enabling technology is key, actually, for these early warning systems for all. So thanks.
I just maybe want to quote one example. You know, in South Africa, we have a weather radar network, for instance. It's not so common within the rest of SADC, but a lot of various countries are now looking at, you know, the weather radar, to enter the weather radar group. But, you know, the lessons that we've learned in South Africa with weather radars is that it is a very good platform to provide information in real time, but it's also a very cost-intensive piece of equipment that has to be maintained and calibrated in order to provide useful information. And the investment in training and maintenance is what a lot of the countries miss. And I mean, we've burned our fingers with that aspect as well in South Africa. So yeah, it's good technologies. I know that the WMO has got this global, you know, baseline observation network. So countries like Mozambique and Zambia is on the list for improving and expanding their surface observation network.